After doing this so many times, one thing I've learned is that the process of actually having the conversation actually tends to build on itself and make it better as you go. Yeah, because interviews are always funny that way.
They are.
Hey, welcome to the HCRP studio. I'm Vlad Davidiuk. I work for the HCRP as a Director of Communications. Joining the studio today by Dr. Jon Spiers. He is a candidate for the GOP nomination for Congressional District 2 in the upcoming primary, which will be held on March 6th, although early voting begins tomorrow, and it's going to be a crazy one. Dr. Jon Spiers, welcome to the HCRP studio.
Well, it's good to be here, and you say crazy because there are 9 candidates.
Yes.
And it's, we joked that we're a baseball team. sometimes a kind of a traveling circus.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun going around the district and talking to people and hearing what they think is wrong with everything in Congress.
Well, it's going to be crazy, not just because of the CD2 race, but because of the races we have across Texas and across the United States. There are races that could tilt the House of Representatives one way or the other. There are races that could tilt state legislatures one way or the other. And it's all built to this point where everything, for better or for worse, is starting to really hang in the balance. And people like you are right in the middle of that.
Well, I think it's exciting because people are energized and they want to vote and they want to have, there's a chance they've recognized that their voice can be heard and should be heard. It's always distressing when you look at a district, a congressional district, over 700,000 people, and then you realize just how few people actually vote. It's really amazing to me when I began the campaign to learn how few people actually vote. I hope this time everybody votes. It'd be wonderful to. That way, no one can complain.
Yeah,
their voice wasn't heard.
This is always the universal problem that we've had in a democracy. Dr. Jon Spiers, that's not the kind of title you expect to hear of a political candidate. We don't have a lot of people who have experience in medical field, people who are experienced surgeons, and you're a cardiothoracic surgeon.
I'm a heart surgeon. It's easier to say that.
A heart surgeon, that's even better. And you're also a healthcare attorney. What led you to becoming not only a candidate for this race, but go back a little bit? What led you to both of those career fields?
Well, as a young man, I remember I was born in Georgia, and I remember reading about this fabulous place where they were doing all these wonderful things in heart surgery called Houston. And so as a young man, I knew this was where I wanted to come. I recognized if you want to be a heart surgeon, why not come to the most important, biggest, best medical center in the world and learn from the very best people in the world. I set that as my goal. And so after my undergraduate training, I went off to medical school, slowly working my way west. I went to Duke University and then worked my way to Tennessee, did general and trauma surgery at the world-famous Elvis Presley Memorial Trauma Center. And, of course, learned to do a very bad Elvis Presley impression along the way. But from there, I came to Houston, to Baylor, to train with Dr. DeBakey.
Wow.
And that was such a thrill to be in the presence of the men and women who had actually fought up and had done so many things. To meet people that truly are giants in their field was great. Learned also this Texas can-do attitude. We can do anything. When you think about it, just to diverge for a minute, this is a city that dug a channel to the sea. I mean, our ship channel, 50 miles inland. We have one of the largest ports in the world. Manned space flight, Houston, Texas. The terms they're synonymous. And then the Texas Medical Center, the biggest and arguably the most important medical center in the world.
Houston is a problem-solving city.
Houston looks for problems. We don't shy away from it.
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
not bashful that way. And so when I came here, I was really excited and was always impressed with that attitude. I went out into practice and practiced for many years, convinced that I was going to spend the rest of my life as a heart surgeon. I loved it. I love patients. But unfortunately, I went through a hurricane about a decade ago called Katrina on the coast of Mississippi. devastated my community there. Many people don't realize the devastation all along the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, New Orleans kind of overshadowed everything
Well, New
else.
Orleans overshadowed it, but
Yeah.
The folks,
But it was devastating
oh,
for
folks in
the
Bay
Gulf
St.
Coast.
Louis and past Christiane and all these little small towns along the coast of Mississippi, some of them were almost wiped out.
Yeah.
So after that, I had to have a bit of surgery myself, wound up having a complication that left me where this hand right here is my left hand doesn't have the sensation in it that it needs to have to be a heart surgeon.
Wow.
So I had to regroup and figure out what I was going to do with life. I came back to what I think of as home because I had invested so much emotionally in the city of Houston. I came back to Houston and attended the University of Houston Law Center. At the University of Houston Law Center, one of the reasons I chose it was that its emphasis. They have one of the leading departments when it comes to healthcare policy and healthcare practice. So for me, it seemed a natural fit. I'm a doctor. I love patients. I want to help patients. How do I keep helping patients? I became a healthcare attorney. That got me to those two credentials, which are a bit odd, I confess.
Yeah.
And then beyond
They're both
that,
very distinguished. You know.
well, it's I appreciate that, but it just for me, it's purpose driven. I wanted to help people, and that really led me to this campaign because when Ted Poe announced he was retiring, I looked back over the past decade of work that I'd been doing, trying to help first prepare for the coming changes in healthcare, and then working to adapt to the changes in healthcare. That's one of the greatest challenges to our country today, and we have not solved it. I was very disappointed when we were not able to keep a promise we had made that we were going to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act with something better.
I was going to ask you about that because as someone who's a heart surgeon and someone who's a healthcare attorney, you're like a person who's like in a prime position to be an expert on the question of Obamacare. And I know I've heard you speak a few times where you talk at length about the flaws and the damage that Obamacare does. So talk.
Well, it does. I like to think that the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was premised on good intentions.
Okay.
I'll just say with the best of intentions, but there are many flaws in this. There are a couple of things that I actually liked the way they did. For example, allowing folks to have family coverages so that young people can stay on their parents' policies a bit longer. Some of the health savings accounts, it'd be a great thing to encourage folks to save and allow. The key for that is it allows them to make choices about their care. But on the other end of the spectrum, we pay too much and we really get too little. And what Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act did was introduce government even more into the process. Whenever I talk to folks, I keep, you may see this notebook beside me, I keep a notebook where I scribble down people's ideas. Folks will have great things to say about this program, horrible things to say about that program, and what my goal is to try to blend all of those and come up with a solution.
Right.
What I think the real problems we face are right now, that we have no cost transparency. I'm in the healthcare field. I have no idea what things cost. I could sort through an EOB, that mysterious form you get whenever you have some sort of care, and I can figure out what things are there. But for the average person, that might not be so clear. And quite frankly, even understanding it, there's no reason, there's no logic behind some of the prices we face. Our drug prices are out of control, and our seniors are facing just a huge challenge every day. In just a few years, Social Security is going to be almost consumed by half of out-of-pocket expenses. So they get a retiree today, in 10 years, may get health care coverage through Medicare, and then they get their Social Security benefit, and half of it is going to be eaten by out-of-pocket expenses.
Wow.
So that makes no sense at all.
That's really destructive to any person's retirement, especially in those years where they're not able to get income to offset those costs.
Well, that's really just part of it. I mean, these folks, we made a promise to them. And I'm a big believer in keeping our promises. Are we going to have to change our Social Security program? Are we going to have to change Medicare? Yes, we are. But we need to do it in a rational and reasonable way. affecting someone. I just got my AARP mailer the other day inviting me to join. When there comes a point we're going to have to gradually ease into that, but I think we are going to have to make changes, real changes, and that's not a popular thing to talk about, but we need to talk about it. That's one thing that I believe I bring is the willingness to talk about things that we're uncomfortable talking about, because as a doctor, that's what I had to do with my patients.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not always a perfect world.
How do you respond to people who say, well, you're a doctor, and that makes you an expert on healthcare, makes you an expert in that particular segment, but what expertise could you possibly have in these other critical, complex areas that we need to address?
Well, like most people, I like to study what's happening in the world. One of the highlights of my legal training was when I spent some time in a course on international relations and basically the policy of war. Obviously, war is a last solution, and it's one we should always want to avoid. But what I learned in there was some of the technical aspects of diplomacy. One area that was really fascinating to me was the use of force in protecting American interests.
Okay.
International law and the preemptive self-defense doctrine, the Caroline principle. And so we take things like that and we just build on it. But the reality is, in what we need in Congress is not 435 experts so that we can say, oh, he's the expert on this, or she's the expert on that, we're going to do what they say. No, we need 435 problem solvers who are going to say, we don't know all the answers. And a lot of people have a hard time admitting they don't know the answer. I don't know all the answers about healthcare. We have to look for solutions, and we have to draw on everybody's idea.
Right.
Anytime someone comes up to me with an idea about a problem, I listen. I really want to hear their solution, because they may have the solution. It may be some kid sitting at his computer at home who posts a solution on Facebook. This is something we should do. And wow, that really is what we should do. Or it may be someone that comes up to me in a coffee shop. Or it may be some academic. Unfortunately, we tend to think that Congress has all the solutions. Congress is supposed to bring the solutions together.
That's true.
And I think that's what I bring, is that willingness to do that. I don't have to have credit for solving anything. I don't want credit for solving anything. I just want to solve it.
That's a refreshing change from a lot of politicians who want to make sure that their name is on the front of the document as a sponsor, but they're not really interested in what the final outcome is. So it's refreshing to hear that.
Well, I appreciate it. I think that circles back to what has excited me about this election. Is there's so many people that are energized. Mm-hmm. There's so many people offering up solutions and ideas. If we can get everybody interested, then it's not the Jon Spiers solution to this or that. It's our solution to this problem or that problem. Because at the end of the day, we're all in it together.
Now, one other way that you have learned how to tackle different problems and how to approach different problems is you have an extensive career in military service. Well,
I don't call it extensive. I was in the Army Medical Corps Reserve when I started in med school. Mm-hmm. There was a program there, and that program, I don't even know if it still exists, but it was an interesting way to try to get critical specialties into the reserve. Mm-hmm. And I participated in that. I think I was a total of 16 years, and I'm proud of that.
That's pretty extensive.
Well, of the 16 years, though, I have to confess, as a doctor, a friend of mine who was let's say he was at the very sharp end of the spear, pointed out to me one time that doctors are just like MASH, because I always felt like it was we were a little bit out of place as a doctor. It was a lot of fun. I loved working with these folks. The men and women that risked their lives for our country deserve to have the very best of medical care, and that was my motivation. Mm-hmm. I never claimed I don't claim to have been a soldier. I'm not a soldier.
Right.
I'm a doctor, and I also know that if you were someone who was injured, I really stood a good chance of being able to fix you, and so it was a no-brainer for me. I had the training to deal with gunshot injuries and other sorts of trauma that at the time I was in was pretty extensive. Even after that, though, when you go beyond there, the active duty, it brings me to an issue that's very dear to my heart, which is our veterans. I've worked at 2 veterans medical centers, and first of all, there's really very dedicated people at both of those centers, and I'm sure across the country. And taking care of veterans was wonderful. I look back over my career, being able to talk to someone that was on the Bataan Death March.
Wow.
And hearing from them their stories, that is just incredible. The bravery that some of these men and women have shown, and their dedication to the country, their love of country. They were children, really. Let's face it. Well, I think of myself now. When I was 18, I was an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And these are men and women, some that joined up at age 17 to fight for our country. And I really believe the VA is one of the greatest ideas our government has ever had. We owe these people a debt. What disturbs me about the VA is when it doesn't function as I think it should. Many times, I think the problem is that the VA is the greatest idea the government had. The problem is the government stayed involved in the VA and tried to micromanage it. Now, that's an oversimplification. But I think we have a lot of issues there that we must address to give the quality of care that these men and women need. One of my ideas is really just to expand the choice program that we have. And I know it's a touchy subject. I know people are going to disagree with me. But others are going to say, it is true. Why should I have to go to the VA to get care for this or that or the other when I could get that in the community quicker and really for about the same cost?
That's true.
So, and there's some things about the VA, though, that we could take and move into other practice that'll complement that. Our VA can actually negotiate prices on drugs, medications.
Unlike the rest of us, yeah.
Well, we can't, and oddly enough, Medicare doesn't.
Yeah.
So we've got one government program that can negotiate for a lower price for medication, and another part of our same government that can't. That makes
that makes no sense at all.
No sense at all.
No.
But what I would like to see our VAs become is really specialty centers.
Okay.
Here in the Texas Medical Center, we have a fabulous VA, and we have a host of other hospitals that are really excellent. And our VA provides needed services to so many veterans, not only here in the Houston area, but from around the country. We could actually streamline that and specialize that. The quality of care at an academic VA with residents like this is good. But some of the smaller VAs, we can make more into specialty clinics or specialty centers. Quite frankly, I don't know that most private hospitals are ever going to be very good at treating some of the traumatic injuries we see with war.
That's true.
But they are very good at taking care of gallbladder disease or heart disease. Our VAs can be refocused to concentrate on these areas that are
those
unique,
specific things.
And of course, some of them, like the one here, because it takes care of so many and it has such a strong infrastructure, then maybe it can be a full-service VA. Yeah. We have to see. And those are solutions that I think we need to think about. We need to get some good minds working on that. The first step is to be willing to look at it.
Sure.
And to consider it.
You've you've participated in a wide array of focus group discussion panels and debates and forums, and you've had an opportunity to really develop your views on different subjects and different policy issues. One of the most interesting ones right now, because it's front and center for a lot of people, is immigration. What specifically is Congress doing now that you think is something that you would be willing to get on board with and support, and what do you think you'd like to propose that maybe hasn't been fully implemented yet?
Well, I think immigration is a hot button topic. People have very strong feelings both ways. I think we need to reform our immigration system in the sense that we've got a set of laws as to what we should be doing, as to how we should be doing things. And unfortunately, we all too often Congress passes laws and then doesn't fund the infrastructure to actually enact the law or put the law into practice.
Very often.
We need to actually enforce the laws we have.
Sure.
And to make certain that folks are here legally. We need to know who is in the United States. We're a nation of immigrants. We welcome people. My family came here long ago. Your family came here. We did it legally. And so we need to actually enforce those laws.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, with the DACA program up in the air as it is, we need to closely examine that. But it's my belief we have a system in place for these folks to become citizens. They should take advantage of the system that is there. And for these folks that have been here for many years and say, oh, now we have to go back and start over, I really believe you could have actually already been trying to on the path of citizenship. We need to think about that. People are going to get angry either way. There's strong opinions, and that's fine. I like strong opinions because that allows me to gauge what people really believe and what they want. But in the end, we should really just enforce our laws. We keep passing laws and then not enforcing them, and then we make an excuse why we have to pass another law. I don't like that. That Congress should address the problem now.
Rather than piecemeal.
Yes.
Okay, one thing that's really currently in the news is the issue of gun control.
Yes.
The recent shooting at a high school in Florida caused a lot of people, especially some students who survived the shooting, are now being presented in the media as leaders of this movement to demand additional gun legislation. Where do you stand on that?
Well, first of all, that was absolutely horrible. And I try to think of what it would have been like to me as a student, and it would have been overwhelming. What it would be like if that were one of my children. That would be overwhelming. If it's my wife, it would be awful. And so I just want to start saying I think it's a horrible, horrible tragedy. And we do need to look at our gun laws and figure out what works and what doesn't work. But even beyond that, we need to circle around to our basic mental health care. Right now, I think we're failing everyone when it comes to mental health care. We're not providing them support structure. We're not interdicting, acting early enough to help these folks. Mm-hmm. We're waiting for tragedy after tragedy after tragedy to occur. In the United States right now, every day, 20 veterans take their life. We have a mental
That's
health
a tragedy.
problem.
Yeah.
And so we have to work to solve this. I'm sensitive to it, I suppose, because I'm a physician, but everybody should be sensitive to that. There were so many signs, and it's easy. It is so easy to Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, everyone should have known. But we really do need to critically assess the way we look at our gun laws, the way we look at the problems that we have as a society that can be traced back to mental health issues, because this is a mental health issue as well.
Yeah, it's alarming to see in almost every single one of these cases. Hindsight is 20/20, and everyone seems to be saying, "Well, thinking about it, yeah, that guy had some issues, and we should have seen something like this coming." And it's tragic that it takes a violent incident, it takes loss of life for people to realize that the problem has deep roots that go back quite a bit of ways.
Well, I've told far too many mothers and fathers that I'm sorry that their child died. I've dealt with gun violence as a physician for many years. I don't know that we have a perfect solution here in the United States. I think we have good laws that we need to enforce, and that's the starting point. We can branch out from there when it comes to just regulations. We can make it overwhelming. But what we need to look at, the real problem as I see it, is a mental health issue. It's a judgment issue.
Let's transition a little bit and focus a little bit on what makes you tick, what makes you you, and who you are. Growing up, you said you were born in Georgia. How long did you live in Georgia?
Well, I always joke when I went away to college, and my parents moved from a little town halfway between Augusta and Savannah called Millen, which you may not see it on a map. It's a small town, but it's very important to me. I love to keep up with what's happening in that town, because these are people that, though they be far away from where I am now, I feel connected to, because they're the same people that are in every community in the United States. They are good, solid folk who work hard, know the value of an honest day's work, That's what really shaped me as a young man. From there, I try to carry that with me.
Sure.
Now, my parents moved to Tennessee when I was a sophomore in college, and that's actually started me on my course out towards Texas. I joke about the arc. They moved to Chattanooga. I went to school in Memphis, and then it was a short hop down to Houston.
Sure.
So that's kind of how I got here.
Who were your heroes growing up? I mean, who inspired you?
Well, it's really kind of funny. I grew up loving John Wayne. You know, the good guy always wins, and he would swagger in and save the day. That was a television hero, and I played ball in football, so I look at many professional football players, and I always would think, oh, that's a hero. Like Jerry Kramer was one. Brian Piccolo was a great hero of mine. I'm third. And politically, Ronald Reagan. Now, for a candidate to say Ronald Reagan is their, a Republican to say Ronald Reagan is their hero, should be no surprise.
It shouldn't be, no.
But what I liked about Ronald Reagan was the sense that he wanted to bring people together. And that's really what motivates me, is bringing people together. I don't want people to agree with me on everything. I don't want people to all be like me. The world would be a boring place if we all agreed and we all were the same. We need to be different. We need to have different ideas. But that is the way I kind of approach life. If everyone were the same, wouldn't it be boring?
Yeah.
So, but another one, beyond that, I like Teddy Roosevelt.
He's a good one.
Not Franklin, but Teddy, because Teddy had this speak softly, carry a big stick. It's get the job done.
Yeah, charge up San Juan Hill.
That's right.
That sort of thing.
He was we can do this guy.
Yeah, he was a take no prisoners kind of guy, just a man of action.
Sometimes that's what you need.
Yeah.
Is a man of action who, consequences be darned, we're going to do what's right. And that's a good mantra to live by.
Now, you jumped into this race, and I remember the day when you actually came to the office and you brought your paperwork and you signed our wall.
Mm-hmm.
What was the catalyst for that decision? What was the one thing you know what, I need to run?
I'd been helping other people try to sort out health care, other candidates,
Mm-hmm.
a variety of races at all levels, try to figure out things we could do for health care. And when Representative Poe announced he was retiring, I got a text message saying, Ted Poe's retiring, you need to run for office. And at first I thought somebody was playing a prank, and I set the phone back by the bed. It was late at night, and I was trying to doze off, and then I just kind of sat up in bed and realized, if that is true, I've been working on this for a long time. I don't have political aspirations. I wanted to solve a problem.
Right.
And so I talked to my wife and up for a long time, as in days, about what this would mean. Would I be able to make a change? What would be the impact on my family? What would be the impact on our lives? And at the end, it came back to there will be a lot of negatives associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to one of our kids and saying, this could get ugly. Politics is dirty and can be very dirty and ugly at times.
It's a very brutal sport.
It's very brutal. Well, that's one of my friends says it's a full contact sport.
It is.
You don't realize it. But at the end of the day, I realized that America is worth it.
Okay.
See, I really did grow up believing that America was the greatest place on earth, and that America is a place where dreams are big and actions are bigger, and we just work to make it all better. Circling back to Houston, this is what we try to do. We try to make it work. So when I thought about it, I knew that I couldn't look myself in the mirror 5 years from now, a year from now, and think I could have, but I didn't try.
Yeah.
It was the time and place for someone like me to do this. Politics is not for everyone, and no one should feel guilty for not doing it, but I knew I would if I didn't.
So what have you learned so far?
That it's a lot different than what you imagine. Helping people formulate policy is it's very analytical. You look at things from a different perspective. But when you go out and meet people face to face and you hear their stories, politics is very personal. I've met folks that were very earnest in telling me their terrible stories of what they've had to endure and what they want and their possible solutions. And they're so valuable to me to hear these because it puts the human side on it. I'm not someone that likes to be away. My favorite events are the ones where I get to actually talk to people and have them say, John, I want you to think about this, this, and this, and you've got to change this other thing. And the next person says, no, they're all wrong. We need to do this, this, and this. But it gives me a chance to connect with people because I love people. I love people. I don't want to be a politician who goes away to Washington and never comes back home. My thought is that if you're not actually working there, you need to be working here.
That's true.
And all these small events and get-togethers and coffee shops and meet and greets, any Republican club, any club, period. Once you're elected, everybody needs to be able to be in touch with their congressperson.
Sure.
That's what I want.
Now, speaking of these groups and clubs, a lot of them are going to be having events coming up. What do you have on your calendar?
Well, we've got a lot on the calendar, and I have to divide them between things that I'm doing from my other life, my non-political life. Tomorrow, let's see, I wrote it down. Tomorrow we have an event with the Greater Houston Pachyderms at Tony's on Richmond, which is right by Costco Greenway Plaza. It's going to be a nice forum. I think all the candidates will be there, and we're going to probably answer a lot of tough questions. Well, it's important. People should come to that. Plus, you get a good meal.
And that's a real sophisticated crowd because Greater Houston Pachyderms has been around for a long time, and they're very experienced. They're very sophisticated with how they approach these issues, how they try to solve these policy problems. There have been ambassadors who have gone there, diplomats, experts in their field. So this is a crowd that is not just a standard run-of-the-mill constituent crowd. This is a crowd that will ask some extremely detailed, deep, probing questions, and they'll elicit some good answers.
Well, what I like about tough groups, and I think all groups can be tough.
Oh, yeah.
What I like about tough questions is it actually makes you think, and you can't just spout off a talking point. We learn a few talking points all along. And really in a campaign, there are a lot of soundbite moments. You want to get a little snippet of here, a snippet there. For example, one of the things I really want to do is change health care. And folks say, well, how are you going to do it? And my reply is generally, do you have a couple of days to just sit here and talk? Because then we'll get started with the outline, and then we can start fleshing it out.
It's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
Yeah.
But the key with all of these problems, no matter how complex they are, is remember, they're the most complex thing that I used to do. Some of the cardiac surgery, the heart surgery that I used to do was very complex. It was made up of a couple of thousand of small, simple steps. That's the way solving any problem is. There are a lot of steps.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. And that's what we need to do. When I talk to forums like this, when I meet with anybody in our district, they offer little bites. They help me figure out these are the little steps we need to take. And it's always fun. Just because it's a pachyderm meeting, I think other folks are going to be able to come to
Oh, yeah.
so it'll be fantastic. In fact, they welcome folks to come to this.
And it's a great lunch at Tony's.
It is a fantastic lunch. That's one of the things about this. You've seen, I don't get to eat them usually. I don't usually get to eat the meal. And I probably shouldn't because I think I haven't missed enough in my life. But the price on some of these is really good. The food is good. The conversation is great. What more do you want out of life?
You can't beat that. So. Dr. Jon Spiers has been our guest today at the HCRP studio. You can find his website at drjonspiers.com. He's also on Twitter at Dr. Jon Spiers, and you can find him on Facebook, Dr. Jon Spiers. Look him up there if you're interested in his campaign or if you're interested in donating to his race. If you have any questions or if you'd like to ask him any detailed policy issues, he's more than happy to take those questions. Dr. Spiers, thank you for joining us here in the HCRP studio.
Much. I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. And I encourage people, please write in, challenge me.
Yeah.
Your solution may be the one we're looking for.
That's what you're here to do.
That's the important thing. All right?
Absolutely. Thanks. See you next time.
Thank you.